Well, look, it's been brought to my attention in many cases. People still have difficulty in parking, and again, we don't want to be banging the drum all the time, but it seems to come back to the same thing. Are we actually addressing it on a bigger scale? Now, I did a bit of research and I looked back as far as back to 2017, where it was actually agreed that we were going to look at creating 500 new car spaces, 100 more off-street. That hasn't materialised. So the question I'm bringing up here was very clear. And we have to understand, we embrace the work that's done with the public realm, but we have sacrifices, car spaces. People have to remember, you were able to park on O'Connell Street. We look at the community school, the worst parking there, the library, parking there. And now all these developments are very welcome, but if you take away those spaces, now currently my numbers have clearly stated that we are losing about 239 car spaces. We have not them replaced. So to lose a car space, you're actually losing income for the town.
And just on that, is it your feeling that the question hasn't been adequately answered?
Well, I don't believe it has. I'd like to get factual information. Now, I do feel very strongly, before COVID, when the country was at its best, I felt, they're the numbers we should be now adhering to. In other words, we need to see, are we maximising that output and the amount of activities going on? If there are any restrictions anywhere, we really need to look at that. Now, I look back again, and only 2 years ago, in 2023, the Chamber of Commerce were actually critical that a multi-storey car park was taken out of the proposal for the 2040 strategy plan. I don't see any proposal right now for those 500 car spaces. So we're not being critical, or I'm certainly not being critical, but I do care about the viability of our town. And at the moment, businesses are finding it difficult to increase footfall. And the only way you do that is getting more people easier access to the town.
There was a phrase in the response you received which was to the effect of the spaces haven't been lost, they've been repurposed. It's repurposed as wider roads, repurposed for other infrastructural projects. Is that a creative use of language in your view?
I found a different way of approaching it, because really what you're saying is, I couldn't get the point. The point I was trying to say is, have we lost car spaces? If you're repurposing, you've changed its use. So we have lost car spaces. So all I'm saying is, first of all, we need to replace what I believe we have lost. And with the cloister has to be welcomed, but remember, there are still restrictions at weekends and games and all that. That is a problem. But long term, we're looking at creating about 200 car spaces. So really, we're only replacing what we have removed. So we need to get reality here. So let's build and look at actively how do we create more of those activity. Now we have the National School taken on board. You have the Dunn stores. Why can't we double the size of that multi-storey car park in tandem? Why can't we look at maybe in front of Temple Gate somewhere that we could build a potential new multi-storey car park? Because we have to go back to Kildare Village as a perfect example. If we look at the German model, we look at the Aldis, the Lidls, what do they have around all of their units? Parking. So if we can create the parking, the town will thrive.
Based on your engagement with businesses in the town, the likes of the Cloister Car Park, the Gort Road Business Park, other developments, are those proposed car parks easing fears in any way for traders?
I look at the end of the week, I say, how is business? Now, currently, they're struggling, they're finding it difficult because there has been a lot of work. Now, we're going to have a beautiful looking town, but let's make it more attractive, make it more user-friendly. You asked the question there, there's works ongoing at the moment. Unfortunately, it's going about 2 months over the time it was meant to close. There's businesses right now that their turnover is down as much as 50%. That's a real concern for me. It's a concern for the long-term jobs, the viability of those businesses. Now, long-term, I would hope that we'll have something to sell as a town. But we're not addressing the parking issue. There's numbers there. Comments actually made that we don't look at all the reports. But sure, I always look at reports. How do you go to better if you don't look at the facts? The facts are telling us there is a deficit. Let's address it. Move on.
Another matter you raised then was above the shop premises, units that are located above ground floor or street level retail units. Are we making the best use of those spaces in Ennis at present?
Well, now, I put in the question that I believe there's a lot of derelict properties that are, and they were actually built on the basis of for commercial, that are never going to be a commercial viable business. So that is a cost to the owner, but also the fact is that we're again looking for accommodation. If there was ever an easier way to deal with creating extra residential units, it has to be to look at those empty units and can we convert them back into residential use. There are many properties in our town that are earmarked for that. We look down the old Mill Road, we look at all of Francis Street, you look at Woodkey Car Park, Clare Road, Lower Market Street, the Mill Road. These are areas that we could rejuvenate in getting new homes, new apartments built and get people back in our town. But the reality of this is that unless planning is prepared to make it easier for the property owners, that's simply not going to happen. Now, our derelict section under Carmel Green is doing a superb job, and they're basically finding anyone that leaves a building is derelict. And then we look at a compulsory purchase, but nobody wants to go down that road. That's quite long, lengthy and expensive and takes a lot of time. If there was ever an easy way of addressing this, is make it easier for the property owners to convert into commercial assets. And I believe we'll be a great dent on the shortage of housing if we're allowed to achieve that. The reply I got is we're now going to do a survey on all the vacant units, so hopefully we can progress going forward on that issue.
And having that survey, that'll be welcome, I would imagine, in terms of addressing it.
Yeah, and I think that everyone has acknowledged. One thing you have to remember, young people right now, at the prime of their lives, like to live in an urban area. And it'll bring more activity into our town and safer. But also the fact is that they don't necessarily have cars. So we won't be hopefully adding additional car spaces. But because of legislation within planning right now, because of restrictions in our urban areas, as we all know, because of water infrastructure, because of zoning, there is a problem there. So if we want to deal with an issue that we could create more houses right now and homes that would suit a certain cohort of people, this is one that we need to embrace.